Welcome back to Going It Alone, a Year of Play. This is episode 10, Yikes, what's the future going to hold now? But before we start, let me remind you as to why I'm doing these videos. I had lunch yesterday with one of my friends, and it was quite significant because just about a year ago, I had lunch with that same friend, and we were talking about me going alone and making the decision to officially resign. Now, he shared with me, as a self-employed person himself, all the tales and the stories and the frustrations, but the excitement and the risks and the benefits that all come from that self-employment journey and that self-employment experience. And so, anyway, it was about a year ago that I also officially resigned. And I remember entering into that conversation. But the moment I did it, there was this immense sense of relief and excitement, fear, of course. But here I am a year later. And within that year, I've learned so much. But I've also got to look to the future. And I've also got to think about, what do I want going forward? One of the habits that I've got into is making sure that I review my business at least quarterly. So that sort of formal quarterly review. And I try and go to the caravan or go somewhere where it's just me, where I can truly focus on my business. When I first started doing that, I thought I was absolutely clear on where I wanted to take my business. I thought my value proposition was absolutely sound. And I thought I knew what I didn't want to do. But what's really fascinating is I was all wrong on all those points. It's taken me 10 months, loads of conversations, reaching out to people who were not originally in my network and learning from them, asking their advice and exploring so many different opportunities that's made me really reflect on, where do I want to go now? So what have I learned then? Well, one of my drivers, as I've shared previously, is that's financial security. And I have learned that I want to ensure that for the future, my business has financial sustainability. And for me, that's all about longevity. How long can I continue to do this for? And so I set myself some targets around, okay, how much money do I need in the bank? How much cash flow do I need in order to keep paying myself in order to do this and do what I'm enjoying doing? That's really important. Another thing that's come about is I actually really enjoy the HR strategic work, and I've been fortunate enough to be engaged in some client work and some consultancy work, and I realise I do actually enjoy that. I also recognise I've been selling the process of Lego Serious Play as opposed to how it can solve problems, and so that is something I truly want to address going forward. And the other thing is that I've realised that what I saw as future opportunities to grow my business and move into maybe new territories are actually things that I don't really want to do. They're not really going to float my boat. So that's been a massive realisation too. So how did, after 10 months of doing this, did I suddenly come to some of these realisations? Well, as I mentioned, that making that decision to truly stop and focus and have that quarterly review on my business is invaluable, and I absolutely advise that anyone who's going it alone, well, to be honest, in any business, whether you work for another employer, it's really important to stop and just think about where you are, what you want to do, and how you're going to get there. But the real catalyst for me was, well, there were two or three things actually, but it started with, I attended a weekend workshop where it was called Going for Growth, and it was designed to stop and focus on my business and talk through and bring about an idea that I wanted to progress. It was a whole weekend of working on that particular idea, exploring all the risks and all the things surrounding that idea, making sure it was financially viable, and from a value proposition point of view, would it really help and fill a need? And so it was all looking at those sort of things, even bringing it to market from a social media point of view. So that was one thing where I worked on this issue or this thing and realised that actually it might not be right for me and it might not be right for the business. Now, if I hadn't done that, that would have been a pipe dream or a thought in my head that I probably would have just had there in the future, looking towards it, thinking, yes, someday I'll get to that. But it was amazing that I was able to understand, address, and almost park that and throw that idea to touch, actually, because I've realised now that it's not where I want to go. Another thing that helped me realise is a chance encounter with an amazing guy from the States. And we had a call over Zoom, and he was asking me some really interesting questions, and it made me think. And it just, the power of connecting with other people and talking through some of your thinking is invaluable too. It can be a lonely place being self-employed, and so it's a massive learn for me that, you know, don't be afraid to share the ideas, and it's not like someone's going to steal them all and you'll lose everything to the competition. Actually, sharing is really helpful to determine where you want to go and how you're going to get there. And then thirdly, the end of some recent client work has also made me realise how much I love doing a certain thing and how much I really need to put that back into my business model and how I want to work. So therefore, what does the future look like? What does all this mean? Well, number one, I worked so hard on my value proposition when I first set up my business, and I'm now revisiting it. I spoke to a friend recently and he said, look, you know, you've achieved an awful lot in 10 months. How many startups, how many early stage businesses don't have to revisit some of their value proposition or revisit some of their approach and what they're doing and how they're doing it? So therefore, I am going to be positioning myself more in the consultancy space, but really bringing to life the Lego Serious Play methodology within that. So does this mean that everything I've worked on and everything I've done to date needs to change? Absolutely not. One of the things that I spent so much time doing 10 months ago, 12 months ago, when I was setting up my business and thinking through what I wanted to do, was focusing on the core, what I truly believe. And I recommend to anyone, particularly if you are starting up your business, to spend more time on that. What is it at the core? What are you trying to do? What's your reason for existence, your purpose? What's going to make you absolutely jump out of bed every day? Because for me, that hasn't changed. It's the activity that I'm doing that's changing. So, but the foundational elements, the heart of my business and what I believe in remains the same. A friend of mine often cites Whitbread as an example, which I suppose sort of helps hammer home that point. So Whitbread, Samuel Whitbread, initially a brewer, and so Whitbread were originally big brewers and had a very successful business, but they no longer are a brewery. Then they're one of the largest hospitality organisations, very successful hospitality organisations, owning Costa, Premier Inn, and many others. Now, what Samuel Whitbread was very clear about was that customers were at the heart of his business, and he always wanted to innovate and stay ahead. So I might not be as big as a Whitbread, but certainly I've reflected on that. I'm looking at my business and say, look, I want to stay true to my founding spirit, my founding principles. But the reality is, some of how I do that is going to change, and I have to think like that if I want to stay ahead. So to close, advice from me. When I'm thinking from my perspective what the future looks like, well, here's some bits of advice that I've learned along the way over the last 10 months, which has got me to this point. Number one, pivot and accept that things change, and don't get bogged down and stressed by it. It's actually really, really healthy. I'm so glad that I've come to some of these realizations now, rather than waiting 2-3 years down the line and to then realize that actually this isn't the way I wanted to go, or it's not working out as well as I would like, or I could have done some other things much, much better. Number two, be clear on your reason for existence. Because when change happens, as long as you're clear on your core and what you do and why you do it, then change is much, much easier. And I always say commitment comes before motivation. If you believe in something, you're more committed to do it. So spend a lot of time on your business in the early stages, focusing on that. And number three, spend time on your business, but also on you, always looking for the things that make you happy. Now, the reason why I set out to go alone is because I wanted that freedom. I wanted to do things that I wanted to do that made me enjoy the world of work. Yes, bills need to be paid, but it doesn't mean you have to do work that makes you miserable. Because if that was for me, I may as well go back to my previous jobs. Do the things that make you happy and build your future with that in mind. So I hope some of those things that I've learned have resonated or could potentially help you. I have learned over the last 10 months, and certainly more recently, that you know what? It's okay to change. It's okay to rethink. It's okay to hash out a different way and revisit that value proposition. Now, I know many would say that you can't be doing that constantly because you need to make sure that you're not confusing the customer. You need to give things a chance and embed things. But certainly in the early stages where I'm at, I'm really excited by this opportunity to rethink the future and rethink where I want to go. And on that note, join me next time for episode 11. I can't believe it's been 11 episodes, but episode 11, Yikes, Reflections of a Year That's Flown. Thanks, and if you like what you see, please do share and subscribe.